Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me fine? So first I want to thank ITAMCO, Joel and his team for putting this together for the second straight year. It's great getting everybody together under one roof and talking additive manufacturing. I also want to thank all the presenters for coming up and sharing what they're doing locally in the region with additive manufacturing, and everyone else, the attendees, for participating today. So as Joel said, my name is Cargnino. I'm a business development engineer with Kenna Metals. This is my second year presenting at this event. With my discussion today, I'm hoping to talk about two separate things. One, what Kennametal as a company is doing in additive manufacturing, and second, what we're doing here locally within the Goshen area as it pertains to this process. So to give you a brief overview, Kennametal is a tooling and wear solutions provider. We were founded in 1938 by Philip McKenna, who discovered a unique tungsten carbide material that led to a revolution in the way we machine steel. Since then, we've grown to have a revenue of about $2.4 billion a year with 10,000 employees operating across the globe. Kennametal has been successful throughout the years because of the main part due to our material expertise and our application knowledge, so we could have our products succeed in some of the harshest wear environments out there. So to give you a little snapshot of Kennametal's footprint, we are headquartered in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but we have operations around the globe, production plants across the U.S., two specifically in Indiana. We have a customer base of 80,000 customers across 60 different countries, and we currently have 1,700 active patents. We serve a variety of different industries. We do everything from providing materials for the coating of aerospace industry products such as landing gear, turbine blades, to manufacturing components for downhole equipment for oil and gas drilling and mining operations. If there's an environment where it's challenging in terms of the wear you see, whether that be corrosive wear, mechanical wear, or high temperature wear, Kennametal products are usually present. So why additive manufacturing at Kennametal? So looking at additive manufacturing, you take away the traditional process of getting a billet of material, machining it down, subtractive manufacturing it down to an end component. Instead, you're building it up using small micron size metal powders. So utilizing our capability in Goshen and other facilities to atomize and produce powder, we have the unique advantage of being able to produce our own additive manufacturing powder via processes we've traditionally used for generating welding material and thermal spray powder. Another advantage of having this process of powder generation is that we can manipulate the powder we create to optimize it for additive manufacturing by changing the alloy chemistries and messing with the particle characteristics to optimize it for additive manufacturing and create those next generation materials for this process. The second component of additive manufacturing, as Joel was covering there near the end, is post-processing, where after you get done printing, you have to usually go through some sort of heat treat cycle or machine the part, so it's not a complete part coming out of the printer. With our years of expertise in machining and sintering, we're able to translate that knowledge we built over the years to this industry as well. So combining our expertise on the front end of generating materials and then on the back end of processing of these components and pairing that with new additive technologies, we've been able to put ourselves in a unique position in this market. So since we're in this unique position, we're focusing on two main things at Kennametal. That's the production of powder for external sale to our customers, and then also the generation of components to either supplement our current production of components done through traditional processes, or to create new components that are designed for additive manufacturing. So to get a little bit more in depth on the powder production side, so additive manufacturing powder is produced via a process called gas atomization. It can also be produced such as process of water atomization, as John highlighted earlier. But one of the main production methods is gas atomization, and that's the process we utilize here in Goshen. So I'll talk about that a little bit more later as I get into what we do at Goshen. But we produce these additive manufacturing powders via this process for a couple different platforms, such as laser powder bed fusion platforms, like EOS produces. We also do it for binder jetting platforms, where it's a similar process to powder bed fusion, but instead of laser sintering each individual layer, you're putting a glue or a binder down in specific portions, and then getting a green or non-metallurgically bonded component out of it, and then that has to go through a post-heat treat or sintering process to get a metallurgically bonded component. And then we also provide for processes like DED, where it might be more of a repair or cladding of material, not necessarily building a solid component, but still considered a 3D or additive process. So supplying for these different platforms, we create cobalt, nickel, and steel-based alloys for this industry, and we're providing direct to customers in segments such as the aerospace, automotive, medical, and beyond. So utilizing that same powder we produce here in Goshen and sell externally, we also use it internally for generating components via our Pittsburgh operation. And we do this, we generate components via two main processes, one of them being laser powder bed fusion, and then the other one being binder jetting, which I just highlighted. And with our internal capability, we have the ability to design, iterate, and build out our knowledge on both the powders, the printing process, and the post-heat or the post-processing to bring prototype components into serial production. So this is just covering the whole AM value chain, from the basic material that is needed for additive manufacturing all the way to the post-processing to get that final component out. So an example of one of the components that we built through our Pittsburgh facility is this one here. IMI Critical is a leading supplier of highly engineered flow control systems for major energy and industrial process companies. We've partnered with them over the past year to create high-performance additive manufacturing components and materials. This specific component here, the Stellite valve cage, was produced via our Stellite 6 AMK powder, and it was put through field trials at a combined cycle power plant where it was subject to highly erosive wear. And then after the full life cycle of the system that this valve cage was in, this part lasted that full life cycle. So this is just one example of the many successes our additive team has had in generating parts that last the life of cycles and show what additive can do in industry segments that might not be traditionally or historically what additive has worked with. So outside of the aerospace and medical industry, more towards industrial and oil and gas industries. So just to summarize what we're doing from a corporate level, we're producing additive powders both for internal consumption and additive sale, and then also designing, optimizing, prototyping, iterating, and bringing components into serial production, both for our internal systems where maybe a traditional product was a long lead time or costly to create and we can do it cheaper via additive, or working with key customers in developing new components that are designed specifically for additive manufacturing. So for the second half of my presentation, I kind of want to highlight what we're doing here in Goshen via our Goshen Stellite facility that's just about 10 minutes down the road in Goshen Industrial Park. So at our facility here in Goshen, we focus on the production of base materials for a lot of different processes and industries, and we focus on the generation of cobalt, nickel, and steel-based alloys. We have a couple different processes here. We do continuous casting of rod, we do drawing and annealing of wire, and then we also do gas atomization for powder. And the materials we create fall into several different alloy families, and we do over 300 unique alloys through our Goshen facility. So specifically Stellite is 100 years old. We've had a lot of experience in the materials industry. We specialize in areas, as I mentioned before, kind of in that high operating temperature, high corrosion, high mechanical wear areas. So if you have 2 or 3 of those wear mechanisms present in the environment that a product or a component is going into, that's where you usually see our alloys. It's not the carbon steels or maybe some of the other products you'd see in high volume industry, but maybe a little bit more niche-y industries. So in 2012, Kennametal acquired Stellite, and ever since then we've been jointly sharing expertise in developing materials for specific industries and specific processes, and that is continuing with additive manufacturing. So similar to Kennametal, we have a variety of different industries we serve. We do everything from creating weld powder that goes on plastic extrusion screws, to do coatings for those. We do little ingots that we provide to the dental industry, which they melt down to make cobalt chrome crowns, copings, bridges, and partial dentures. So we do a variety of different, we work in a variety of different segments. So our traditional business has been on the welding side for the most part. As I mentioned before, we do continuous casting and rod, that's mostly for TIG welding. We do drawing of wire, which is for MIG welding, and we traditionally produce powder for PTA welding and thermal spray, like high velocity oxygen fuel spray and plasma spray for the aerospace industry. But over the past 5 years, due to demand from our end markets, we have been drawn into producing a lot more additive manufacturing materials, anything from dental to oil and gas to that and beyond. So as we look to the future, we're seeing more and more demand from non-traditional additive segments, so outside of the aerospace and medical-centric fields and into more industrial process and oil and gas segments. So in order to capture that demand, we're investing heavily in our plant here in Goshen, everywhere from the Atomization tower, which we create powders, to the screening systems, to the our quality lab, to make sure that we're fit to capture the demand, both currently and in the future. Did I break it? Oh. So as I mentioned before, gas atomization is a process in which you generate additive manufacturing powders. So this process, just to break it down for you, is the melting of raw metal ore from just its mined and processed state into a molten fluid. So if you're creating a stellite, let's say a stellite 6 alloy, you're melting raw cobalt, raw chrome, raw tungsten in an induction furnace. And once that material is melted in that induction furnace, which is usually enclosed in an inert gas environment or a vacuum environment, it is poured into the atomization tower, and it's poured into the tower through a ton dish or a funnel to control flow. And then once that flow reaches the inside of the atomization tower, it's hit by inert gas jets, which shoot argon or nitrogen at high speeds and pressures to break up that molten flow and disperse the particles. Once the particles are dispersed, they form spheres and then fall to the bottom of the atomizer, and they turn from molten to solid during that time, from falling to the top to the bottom of the atomizer. In our facility in Goshen, we have 2 of these inert gas atomizers. They're about 3 stories tall. So if you ever drive by our plant and wonder why our building's so tall, this is why. This process allows us to have great flexibility in the materials we can work with. So we can work with cobalt materials, iron, nickel, and it also allows us the ability to control powder characteristics, which is really important for the additive segment, where we can control morphology, which is the shape of the powder, which needs to be spherical for most additive processes. You can control sizing, get the fine particles you need for a powder bed fusion process, or maybe the more coarser particles you need for a DED process. And you can control chemical composition, where you can maybe manipulate the chemistry to make it more conducive for an additive environment. With the ability to control those features, we can make a lot of different powders, and these are some of the more popular powders we generate for the additive industry here in Goshen. A couple examples is our Stellite 21, which is a cobalt-based powder. We generate that and variations of it, proprietary variations of it for the dental industry for forming crowns, partial dentures, and bridges. For our nickel powders, we produce a Nestel 625, which is similar to an Inconel 625. We've provided that for production of oil and gas components via powder bed fusion. And on the steel side, we do some tool steels and stainless steels, but one specific is a 17.4 pH stainless steel, which we provide to the medical industry for doing surgical tooling and cutting guides and things of that nature. So as we look to the future to kind of expand our knowledge of additive, we're still in our infancy. I mean, we've probably been 5 years in where we've been somewhat knowledgeable on this industry here in Goshen, but we're expanding and learning how we can be more helpful to the industry and the customers we work with. So we're hoping to expand our powder portfolio to have some standard alloys which we can offer customers outside of what we currently have, and then also be able to provide more informational material in terms of if you use our powder, what are the correct parameters to use it on a certain type of system, what is the recommended post-heat treat, what are the recommended post-processing parameters. And then also, if you use these printing parameters, what kind of features are you going to get out of it in terms of mechanical characteristics and things of that nature. So hopefully, the powder will be more plug and play in the future instead of an iterative process of trial and error. We also hope to establish key partnerships with AM customers to develop more proprietary powders and expand our knowledge into what can work on additive platforms. So in summary, Kennametal is providing a solution for the entire AM flow path of providing powder and components, and a big part of that is our Stellite facility here in Goshen, as we're providing the building blocks for building those components. So thank you guys. Do you have any questions at all?
Any questions for Drake?